Even in and especially in our darkest times, the light is still available. Right now, we are all being affected in some way or another by COVID-19. Let's talk about it. These are heart to heart conversations about our challenges and our positive experiences as we move through it together. A place to safely speak about it and to be still and know the truth of who we are. Hello and welcome to a Candid Corona conversation. I'm Jeannie J, and today I'm here with Trai. And Trai, do I have your permission to share this video conversation freely?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I also highly suggest that you do the same. As you know, I'm doing this because even though it brings me a little bit out of my own comfort zone to kind of do these public conversations and meditations, I
Mhm.
feel like it's so important for all of us to take the opportunities to connect heart to heart with real, genuine, authentic conversation as much as we can right now, because there's a lot that's coming up and coming through. So this is just one of those spaces where we just allow it to happen. So
Yeah,
thank you for joining. And I'll start, with the basic questions. Tell me a little bit about how you've been doing lately and, how Corona is affecting your day to day.
yeah, yeah. It's been interesting. I'm gonna close my door.
I love your chimes.
I didn't want them to get too loud.
Lovely.
Um, yeah, it was interesting in the beginning. I've been in self quarantine. I think I'm on day 14 or 15 of that. And I have left the house, I think, once or twice in those days. And I have been furloughed of my job of 3 days so far. And I will share a brief what is furlough because a lot of people aren't familiar right now as to what that is. Furlough does not mean that you have been fired from your job or that your position has been removed from a company. Furlough simply means that the company is not financially stable at this moment. And so they are suspending positions for an undetermined amount of time. When that happens, a person goes off of pay. They're on how do they say it? They say it's it's leave without pay is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the company restabilizes that has furloughed their employees, the employees that they furloughed are their very first call to return to that position. So you're kind of in this little middle world between unemployment and furloughed, and you sort of have a job, but you sort of don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So that came actually unexpectedly on Monday morning. Friday afternoon, I had a recap with my company, just my team, and it was just an opposite message.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that I think that my intuition was already prepared
Mm-hmm.
for anything that could happen because I had the sight and the knowledge that we are in a time of change and that it's not personal to me as that the company has furloughed me, and it's not individual, that this is an entire world change. So before I was furloughed, I grieved so many of the worries and the fears. They all came out of me. I saw everything. And I spent a lot of time in my garden and in my yard and pulling out weeds and processing my emotions through my yard.
Yes.
And I had the weekend and I wasn't really worried about my job, but I had this sense on Saturday and Sunday that I wasn't really going to work on Monday. And I
Mm.
didn't have a reason for that. I just had this sense I wasn't going to work on Monday. I ended up waking up late, and then the phone call that I got was about 15 minutes after I woke up.
Mm.
And so I've been in this little bit of a bubble, right? Because I've been in my house for 2+ weeks,
Yeah.
and I get to see my husband and my dog, which is great. But other than that, it's been really quiet. And I had all of these wishes before we got put in shelter in place
Mm-hmm.
for time,
Mm.
for
Mm.
space,
Mm.
for the opportunity for deeper connection to myself and to others, but in a way that was quiet, that was focused, and that was not so fragmented and distracted as we've been for the last long time.
Right. Right.
So I could choose to fall into fear and anxiety and worry and grief, and I could choose to literally pour those chemicals into my bloodstream and
Mm-hmm.
wire deeper into my brain worry and fear and anxiety, or I could choose something different. And I've done a lot of self-healing work in my life. I had childhood trauma from various places,
Mm.
which I think anybody, if they looked back, could say, hey, I had some trauma in a place.
Right.
And so I've spent a lot of time the last 2 years cultivating how do I take care of me and heal me, and how do I tend to me really deeply on a level that no one else could even touch, because I'm the only one that can touch me
Yeah.
into the level and the depth that I can, just like every individual has that power and that ability.
Yes.
So I'm not freaking out and I'm not worried. And I believe that everything will be okay. And I am beginning to understand and learn that it's almost like fear and belief
Mm.
are two sides of a coin. And you can pick which coin side you want to flip and look at,
Mm.
but it's either going to be fear or it's going to be love. And love is what brings the calm and not the anxiety and not the fear.
Yes.
And the science helps me where I know that I'm chemically pouring toxins into my body if I choose to fall into fear and worry and anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I've decided I was worth more than those feelings and those painful experiences, that I deserved love regardless and in despite of everything that was going on around me. That as a society of humans, we've been through so much.
Mm.
Maybe this generational time, we haven't perhaps experienced this.
Mm.
But you have to look back and look at the Romans, look at the Egyptians, look at Greece, look at all of the places and all of the times that we have had
Yes.
revolutions,
Yes.
massive war, massive destruction
Mm.
from either people or from nature, whatever it is.
Yes.
What did we do? We still rose back up again. We
Every time.
changed and modified and figured out how do we evolutionize into the new place that we're going.
Yes. Yes.
So if we've done this over and over and over and over again, I have to believe that that's what we're doing now. So why is it any different?
Yes. Yes.
And that doesn't take away the struggle, the
Mm.
calamity, and the chaos that could be that is happening around us.
Mm.
But we get to choose how we react to it. And if we even want to turn on Facebook, the radio, Twitter, social media of any kind, and choose to like find all of the scary things and like let's just weave those in.
Mm.
Or we could go outside and realize that the sunrise and the sunset has never dimmed itself in all of this time,
Yes, these are things we can depend on.
and that nature is still showing us, how do you keep going?
Yeah.
So those are all of the things that I've been thinking about and processing through during this time,
Yes.
and just really believing that whatever's happening is taking me into the next phase of my life,
Yeah.
and that I am being carried on the great winds of love and the universe in that journey. So I can't doubt it.
Yes. Yes.
And the last thing I'll say to all of that is, for me, the thing that shifted everything was realizing that I could never meet an expectation of myself.
Mm.
That if I create expectations and I say I shouldn't be afraid, I shouldn't be, doing this, I shouldn't be doing that. Why didn't I do that better?
Mm.
Why can't I do that thing better? And I had gotten to a state of full overwhelm and overload about the week before the pandemic hit in
Mm.
Dallas, where we had to go to shelter in place.
Mm.
And I got the opportunity to go to my parents' house and talk to them for several hours. And it was this really beautiful time where I was able to really finally click into place and understand that humans aren't meant to just be living off of expectations, and that that's the thing that their focus is in life.
Yeah.
And when I gave up that I couldn't meet my own expectations, my fear and my worry and my anxiety,
Mm.
they calmed down and they went away. And I still have to, when I become scared, I remind myself, this is an unmet expectation. You're sitting here saying that you shouldn't be afraid.
Mm.
But what if you just allowed it?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that was how that learning of shifting my expectation into just love for myself, this kind of radical love that it shouldn't exist.
Mm.
Like, we should be done already, right? Like, have you not learned the lesson? And still just choosing to kind of like observe and like turn towards myself and be like, no, hey, I love you.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
you're worthy of love. Despite everything, it doesn't matter. You are worthy of love because you exist and you're breathing and your heart is beating.
Yes. Trai, as I listen, I am feeling these waves of love and gratitude and appreciation. And there are a few things that are just coming up for me that I want to honor. Um, First, that you have been going through this kind of self-imposed, almost self-imposed. It was highly recommended that we shut in, but in this time, what I'll call a time of silence and being with yourself, you were already, in a way, prepared to meet the furlough, which is a term that more of us are becoming familiar with now. Rather unfortunately, but in many ways also fortunately, because these are these opportunities to be still
Mm-hmm.
and really focus inward into what gives us life, into what we want to pour our life energy into. So I want to just honor and applaud you for this time of silence. And also, I want to speak to the science a bit, because as you were speaking about the literal release of endorphins into the bloodstream in terms of what happens when the body is in a constant state of stress, or what might be known as chronic stress.
Mm-hmm.
I read an interesting passage maybe 3 days ago where there have been some tests, and maybe I'll share a citing at the end of our conversation. But there have been studies that have found that 2 hours of silence actually helps the body to build brain cells. So when I hear you saying that you're intentionally using this time in very positive ways to kind of reinvent yourself, reinvent like your whole paradigm in terms of how you experience life, I also hear just in practical terms, your body is reinventing itself, like based on these positive endorphins now that are being added to it. And all of this is being written in a way into a new kind of DNA, a new kind of expression and way of showing up in the world. And so this pause is just one of the things that I'm thankful for about COVID. And yes, to honor the, I always want to honor that, some of us are really struggling. Some of us are not meeting these struggles in as healthy a way as you've been able to. So I want to also highlight and honor that it's so important. Some of the things I heard you say was to feel that, honor that, not be in judgment around it, but to let that wave wash over and through you so it's not stuck in the body. So it's not, and it becomes stuck when we try to resist it. Um,
And I would like to add to that a little bit.
yeah, go ahead.
I was talking to someone else yesterday about this inner talk that we have when we're experiencing something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's yet another thing that has helped me on my journey of understanding that I am worthy of love and worthy of this radical love.
Yes.
And I I went through 2 years of psychoanalysis therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it's a type of therapy that you talk for an hour 4 to 5 times a week with a therapist, and you're free associating your thoughts so that you can learn the patterns of yourself to heal
Yeah.
them. And I was getting to the end of my 2 years of therapy, and I'm learning and realizing just this week that I ended therapy at a time where I made it to where I had to learn some stuff really hard at the end on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I now, looking back, know exactly why I did that
Mm-hmm.
unconsciously, because my one of my biggest life lessons for me to learn is I can do it.
Yes.
I got me. I
Yes.
can heal me. I can take care of me. I don't need someone else to help. Not that I didn't need the support to learn things to get there, but
Yes.
at the end of the day, the person who's going to heal me is me.
Yes.
And so I was at the end of therapy, and I went to a mindful self compassion workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and spoke to the speaker after the workshop because the topic of the evening was the relationship with the critical voice inside of our heads.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm kind of familiar with that talk. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I personally, my most of my life, I would never say the words that have crossed through my mind to myself
Mm-hmm.
to anyone. They have been so mean, so hurtful, so callous and not understanding. And so I had arrived at this place. I was ending therapy, but I had this one big thing I had to still correct. It's like to heal. And I went to this workshop, and I was so frustrated when I went to that workshop because I was so hyper aware of my critical voice inside my head, to the point that I was critical of the critical voice inside my head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I went up to this gentleman after the talk, and he was older, probably in his mid 70s, sweet old man, standing there quiet and focused. And you could feel his heart open, to the whole room, that he was almost like he was viewing the room from his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up to him afterwards, and I could already feel the emotion, heavy right here. And I just said, I do not understand what you're talking about. I
Mm-hmm.
said, I have been in psychoanalysis for 2 years. This has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to make this stop. And he said something that probably wasn't new for my ears to hear, but it was the first time I understood everything that was trying to be shared with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he just looked at me with the calmest, gentlest love in his eyes, and he said, it's not that the critical voice is ever going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you change the relationship to the critical voice.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
then that moved along into my body processing, and I got to listen to a talk by Jack Kornfield.
Oh, I love
And
it.
he was expressing what is it like to meditate. And hey, your mind isn't necessarily always quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And he was sitting there at the beginning of his meditation, and he really couldn't get his brain to quiet down and to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
It kept creating this list of all the things that he needed to do. And that's where my critical voice would have jumped right in and said, won't you just be quiet?
Mm-hmm.
Can't we just focus?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would have gotten frustrated
Mm-hmm.
with the critical voice.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, Jack's response was becoming aware of the fact that his body and his brain were trying to care for him.
Yes.
That they actually were trying to help him
Yes.
achieve the things his body knew it needed to achieve.
Yes.
So instead of getting up, instead of getting frustrated, instead of yelling at the critical voice, whatever those reactions could have been, he showed gratitude and love to that part of himself, and he thanked it for trying to care for him and take care of him.
Yes. Yes.
And then he was able to soften back down and go into his meditation.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that, like the coupling of those things together is what helped me move into understanding that, you know what, maybe the brain just spits stuff out. Maybe it just spits different voices, tones, attitudes out.
Memories.
But I get to choose that I get to just be loving no matter what comes out. That I can have that radical love.
Yes.
And so those are, I feel like that was a little bit of a tangent, but that's what is helping me learn all of those things, and then bringing that science into it of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
If you just keep practicing and keep practicing something, you create a new avenue in your brain.
Yes.
Which means you probably moved out of your anxiety and fear one because you strengthened this one.
Right.
So that science with the science of knowing that the moment you choose to grab on to the roller coaster of fear, worry, anxiety, worst case scenario. If you need a worst case scenario, you can call me anytime. I've done every single one of them. So, but when we do that, it immediately activates all these chemicals inside of us that tell us to go into fight, or freeze.
Yes.
Right
Yeah.
now, go.
Right. Right.
And then we're sitting there and we're like this, and we can't calm down, and we're upset and we're clammy, and we just can't come back down.
Yes.
And so I subtly, and in this time of quiet even more so, have seen that even deeper. It's the click onto Facebook, the click on the link to find out the next largest city that's been deeply impacted and how they're not doing well. And I can feel it right here.
Yeah.
And I have to close it out and say, no, I'm not going there.
Yes. Yes. And honoring what you're feeling as you are contemplating the choice of whether you look right now or not. It's one thing to be informed. We want to check in with our trusted sources, from time to time, and stay abreast of things. But when we lose ourselves in that feeling, when those body responses of fast-paced breathing and fast heart rates and sweaty palms, whatever starts to come up, that anxiety expresses itself in that way. That's a all stop. It's like, okay, do something else that gives the opposite reaction, right? The relaxation response for a bit, and intentionally ease into a way of raising your vibration and sustaining that for as long as possible. In this way, these things don't, our awareness and our ability to be informed isn't then bringing us down, right? But yeah, it's all about pacing. And as I'm listening to you, one of the things that has continued to come forward for me as kind of a recurring theme has been judgment. has been being in judgment. Like I'm really easygoing and wasn't aware of how much judgment I've had running in small ways. Like just being a parent, like some judgment is necessary to help my daughters discern, or consider ways to show up as best as possible in life. And but as adults now, I have to rethink my contracts in ways that it's not judgment. I know when I start to feel that I need it to be different, that's judgment. Whereas if I'm just aware of what it is, that's discernment. And I make those with discernment, I can give myself the mental space to discern, okay, well, what's good for me in this situation, to express what's good for me in this situation, so that we stay in harmony. So I'm in harmony with myself and I'm in harmony with all my relationships. So just in terms of recurring patterns for you, because this is space, time, and opportunity for most of us to really be honest with ourselves, as we are all within the confines of the house or the yard or for however long. Just how has COVID started to help you to maybe be more appreciative of some things about yourself, or some kind of recurring patterns of, ooh, that's definitely my next thing to change? What's up for you around all that?
That's a good question. I think that can you repeat the first half of your question? Because you asked two.
I did. So in terms of recurring patterns,
Mhm.
we have this time to pause and be aware of ourselves on deeper levels, to be aware not only of what's coming up, but what's underneath what's coming up. So, how are you, or in terms of seeing recurring patterns of maybe positives and maybe something you want to work on?
So the positive, well, I guess not the positives, but the reoccurring theme that I'm noticing and working on is one of them is that judgment.
Mm,
But I've been working on that theme for a few years now of seeing that judgment.
mm,
And it was just the coolest timing in my personal life that I had a lot of things flip and I
yes.
saw things transform into a different perspective right before I quarantined.
Mm,
And I think it really helped me become grounded and become really okay with being alone at home.
mm,
When I was a child, I spent a lot of time alone and I had a very large imagination and I could really entertain myself for an endless amount of time.
mm,
And then as I got older and grew and as I went through experiences in life and I went through therapy, there were years where I was very uncomfortable with a lot of emotion or feeling and I would push it to someone else
mm,
and not realize I was disassociating my feelings. And so I'd be like, why is that person feeling that way?
mm,
And whatever. And so I've been looking at these themes for a while. And I think that the one that's growing hugely right now, that I've said many times already, is this radical love.
and I love that expression,
This
that
is the biggest
terminology.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's I love that you're asking because I want to be able to express it, right? And I haven't, it's still so new. We have to believe that we are deserving of radical love as a person, individually. If we don't believe that, it kind of gums up the rest of our relationships, I
Mm,
believe,
mm,
with everything. Our perspective on a, nature or a universal power, if you have a faith like God, it
mm,
can affect that. It can affect your marriage relationship and what you think that looks like or doesn't look like. It can affect your friendships, your family relationships, and it affects the one with yourself.
mm,
So I've been realizing, we had that meditation a couple of days ago. Was it yesterday or the day before? You and I did.
mm,
And The time that I've been at home, I know I'm a little scattered in my words, but the time that I've been at home, I have been realizing how much work I've done to have faith within myself. And I've known for years that I was doing this work and that I would be doing it so that I could, one, heal, but two, I've been through so much and I feel so much that I have to share it.
Yes.
That's there would be no other reason for me to be on the planet, in my opinion. I have been through too much and healed from it and learned how to heal from it to not now turn around and radically love the entire world.
Beautiful.
If
That's a
I
practice in and of
find,
itself.
yeah, if I can find it within myself,
Lifetime. Yeah.
then it exists for everything. And I didn't realize how acutely my body and my heart is connected to that. But when I started to truly love myself, all of my other relationships softened. They all got so much deeper and more loving, more giving, more abundant. And that was the one factor that massively shifted and changed.
Yes.
So this whole time I've been at home, I have been imagining, what are the things that I need to be sharing with the world? What are the pieces and the parts that people need to get to the place that I have found where they finally know that they are worth everything, that they are deserving of everything good and love and light, and that they could be at peace and ease in that space of themselves.
Yes. Yes. So I'm gonna flow into the next question in a moment, but there's so much coming up for me as you keep using this term radical love, and just I want to tease it apart just a little bit for me because I'm feeling it viscerally as you're speaking, right? So I'm just in basic terms of self-acceptance for me and judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm feeling that and I'm starting to feel angst around whatever or judging myself for judging, and then I immediately shift into, oh, I'm judging. It's okay that I'm human and I have judgments, and totally accept that it almost instantly turns that judgment into something that's helping me to be a better person, if it makes any sense, so that I'm not like swept up in living in that, as opposed to just doing my best to be a better version of me in that moment, right? So when I'm hearing you talk about radical love, right, I'm hearing what's coming up for me is self-compassion, self-forgiveness, forgiveness not just of others and other versions of yourself that may have been there to teach you whatever they were there to teach you in as hard or as easy a way as they helped you to learn it. This is a love that expands so completely to encompass your whole being that they also become another part of your whole being. So this radical love includes accepting and loving others in their faults, accepting and actually acknowledging that all of nature is in this growth process, that we're all in this time of COVID-19 together as a transformation and cultural shift. But it's also, like you spoke to earlier, it's kind of a spiritual renaissance in a sense. We may not all be meditating, but we are all changing. We are all spending time with ourselves that we weren't expecting to be right now. So when I start to really feel my way into this radical love, I feel like it's a big part of of how we can intentionally make this shift more positive on the other side of COVID than we were before we came into all of this. So
I think that we have forgotten that we are to be together.
yeah,
And that's one of the biggest things that we have forgotten as a society. And if it took something like this for everyone to remember that, then
mhm,
perhaps that was part of the lesson.
yeah,
And I'll just share one example. And it was the very first time that I read something that I would now call it radical love.
Mm-hmm.
And it just broke me down, because at that point in my life, I didn't have that love for myself. So I really couldn't understand the love that these people had. And it was heartbreaking in a beautiful way. So I read an article that there is a tribe in Africa of people, and when a person does a grievance within this culture, or in this community of this tribe, instead of the person being punished and reprimanded for the thing that they have done wrong,
Mm-hmm.
they are brought to the center of the village,
Mm-hmm.
and they are surrounded by everybody in the village,
Mm-hmm.
and they stay there for days. And the only thing that they are doing is sharing all of the good things verbally to
Mm-hmm.
the person in the middle of the circle, as to why are they good, why are they loved, why are they accepted, why are they whole, why are they okay. And they do this until they all feel healed. And that's how they handle
I love
a
it.
grievance.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read it, I just broke and fell apart, because I couldn't understand that kind of love existing. I read that about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I get it. And
Yeah.
now I want the whole world to see that. I want to pull everybody out of their houses and be like, can we all get in a circle? Can you all remind yourselves why you love yourself and each other?
Yeah.
Because if you were to focus upon that, how much would disappear that was your pain
Yes.
and your forgetting of your connection?
Yes.
How at ease would you be?
Special kind of positive reinforcement, right? Yeah. Uh,
So that's radical, right? That's not what we are told
yeah.
should be the response.
Right.
That's,
Not in our culture anyway. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. It's beautiful to contemplate and resonate with the essence and spirit of why they do it that way. They are literally building and growing those positive traits. And yeah, I can only imagine what that might be like to sit in that circle,
Yeah,
right?
to
Be in the
truly,
center
like,
of
what
that
if that
circle.
person like murdered someone? Truly, I mean, who knows what that grievance was?
Right.
And to
And,
put them in the middle of that circle and still look at them
yeah.
and remember all the things that you know you've seen that are good about them.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh, okay. Just being with that, just contemplating that, feeling that kind of radical love. I'm going to ask you in a moment to start to be still and know. And I want to shift our conversation just a little bit because I want to contemplate for a moment, you know, if everything that we know and see and experience is existing within one field of energy or as one field of energy, and that there is, in my own belief, one collective or universal ultimate intelligence. I don't care what you call it, really, whatever name gives it meaning for you, but I'll call it here a higher power. I
Mm-hmm.
know that this higher power then identifies in each and everything that's showing up. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, each and everything can only be love,
Mm-hmm.
because I experience this higher power as one that evolves itself through love. So, in considering that, I want us to take a moment to see COVID as less of an inconvenience, a hardship, a struggle, and a challenge, because those are the givens. Those
Yeah.
those those are the givens, right?
Yeah.
But I want to take a moment put some space between those givens and to perceive it from a different perspective of, well, what if this was another way that love is showing up in our lives, our individual lives. And I guess along the lines of that thought, actually, if there's anything else burning that you need to say, I'm going to give you space to say it. But otherwise, I want to flow into a light meditation around that thought.
No, I have nothing else. The only other thing I would add that I don't think I've said is one of the things that I've been leaning into in this time of silence that I've been using as a guide is this connection to nature. And really truly looking at animals and earth and sky to show me what's next.
Yes.
Really, I mean, really being quiet, so quiet to find out that I have a little toad couple that lives behind the shop at the fence line of my house. And the 3 little couples of neroli lizards that follow the sun as it moves across the side of my house. And the pair of doves that are collecting my garden trash for their nest. And that they just keep going. And that they're not judging anything, and they're not worrying, and they're not, all they're doing is they're tending to the here and now of what is here and now in front of you today that you need to do.
Yes.
And that it's beautiful.
Yes.
It is beautiful. The sunrise was still gorgeous this morning.
It is. It absolutely is. Yes.
And that would be the only other thing that I feel like I have to add is for me, I guess the thing has been, if you really aren't sure, you really don't know what to do, and perhaps you feel frozen and you can't leave the one chair you've been sitting in for 5 days, just look out the window or just go outside and get quiet and get still. And maybe sit underneath a really big tree. Yeah. And just look around. Just look.
This feels like a whole other conversation on a different day, because we could engage on nature and being still and knowing that peace that is abiding through all of this.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful reminder for myself and for anyone listening. So I appreciate that you've shared that and spoken that into the conversation.
So 1 p.m. tomorrow.
We'll do that. I feel another one coming on. But for now,
of who we are.
in this moment,